Hello everyone and welcome to part 3 where we are going to see processing of herbal raw material. Herbal raw material is used in different forms. They may be direct plant parts, they may be extracts, they may be plant exudates. So let us see today the definition of the need for processing, why these raw materials need to be processed, how they are processed, different methods of processing, and let us see suitable examples of from the raw material what processing goes on and how do we see the final product. So, to define processing, herbal processing involves transforming the raw materials into safe, effective and standardized medicinal products through careful cultivation, collection and post-harvesting techniques. Processing ensures that herbs retain their bioactive compounds while meeting quality, safety and regulatory standards. The key stages in processing of herbs are selection and authentication, cultivation and collection, primary processing, secondary processing and quality control. So, these are main stages which help the herbal raw material maintain quality before the final formulation is put in the market. Let us see these stages one by one. Selection and authentication, where we identify the species using morphological, microscopical and chemical markers. Authentication prevents adulteration and ensures therapeutic efficacy. The WHO emphasizes proper documentation and traceability of herbal raw material. Cultivation and collection, once we have identified and authenticated what we want to cultivate, then the good agricultural practices are followed when we cultivate these herbal raw materials, which include organic farming, biodynamic agriculture, pest management using biopesticides. So, here we ensure that the plants which are cultivated have maximum active constituents. Harvesting at the correct season and maturity stage to maximum the active constituents is part of good agricultural practices. Avoiding contamination from heavy metals, pesticides or microorganisms is also part of good agricultural practices. The primary processing after cultivation involves removal of soil. So, finally, when we collect this raw material after the cultivation during the harvesting stage, all the extra debris has to be removed. It has to be freed from dust and any other foreign matter. So, this foreign matter can be organic or inorganic. Foreign matter where the plant part is official, any part other than that becomes foreign organic matter. Suppose we want to collect the leaves, if the stems and other parts of the plant are there, that has to be removed. That is cleaning or garbling. Drying, controlled temperature and humidity to prevent degradation of phytochemicals. So, when we have to store this in warehouses, we have to take care of the temperature, especially for herbal raw material where there is volatile components or volatile oil. Cutting and chopping, standardized particle size for uniform extraction, either for uniform extraction or preparing the drug commercially for the market. The particle size or the plant part when it is cut has to be maintained. Storage in airtight containers, protection from air, light and moisture which prevents the herbal raw material from degradation. The secondary processing involves powdering and milling which produces fine particles. So, if we want to prepare traditional formulations, for example, the churnas in Ayurveda, the particle size is mentioned in Ayurveda textbooks or official books where it helps the proper drug absorption and maintains the formulation. For extraction, suppose we want to extract the active constituents from the herbal raw material, what solvents have to be used is also mentioned or is important in processing of herbal raw materials. Water generally is considered to be a very safe solvent if alcohol is used by an internal regeneration process, or if it has to be externally used as a solvent, which happens in case of modern day formulation. The traditional formulations use regenerated alcohol, and these solvents are used to isolate bioactive compounds from the raw material or from the plant matrix. Formulation is the final processing where we convert the extracts into modern day dosage forms like tablets, capsules, syrups or topical applications. Stabilization is by adding excipients or preservatives to enhance the shelf life of an herbal formulation. And finally, quality control, which is very important and mentioned by WHO or Ayush, where we use the modern methods to evaluate this herbal raw material or the final formulation. So, we have thin layer chromatography, high performance liquid chromatography, gas chromatography coupled with mass spectroscopy to detect the marker compounds or the bioactive compounds which are present in herbal raw material. Microbial testing, which is very important, this ensures absence of any kind of pathogen in the raw material or in the final product. Regulatory compliance, so when we are aiming for a global market, we have to look at regulatory compliance, which we are going to discuss in detail later in the course, and all the pharmacopoeial standards, the WHO guidelines have to be followed for raw materials. The traditional Ayurveda, Siddha and Unani emphasizes on formulations like Churna, Leha and Bhasma, which are prepared through specific processing methods, and the details of which we are going to discuss in coming week later. The quality control for Churna and Bhasma, what should be the particle size, how the quality control is done, how the raw material is processed, all those are mentioned in Ayurvedic pharmacopoeias and official texts. Modern herbal drug technology, which integrates the traditional wisdom with advanced analytical tools, ensuring reproducibility and global acceptance. The agro processing also adds economic value by converting herbs into nutraceutical decoction or teas, essential oils and cosmetics. So, processing of herbs is a multidisciplinary practice combining agriculture, pharmacognosy and pharmaceutical technology. From selection, authentication, cultivation to formulation and the final quality control, each step safeguards therapeutic potential while meeting regulatory and consumer expectations. So, the detailed stages, let us look at with suitable examples for better understanding. For example, ashwagandha, this is a very common traditional drug found commonly in India, indigenous to India, Vidania somnifera. The roots or rhizomes are often adulterated with capsicum annum roots, and here identification becomes very important. So, authentication is done using microscopic features. For example, the identification of cork, xylem and starch grains, and identification of vithanolides by high performance liquid chromatography. This is important because it ensures therapeutic consistency and prevents ineffective or unsafe substitutes. Aloe vera leaves, when they are cultivated, must be harvested at 3 to 4 years. So, this is an example of processing during cultivation and collection. So, for maximum glycoside content, these leaves should be harvested at 3 to 4 years. Digitalis purpurea, which is a cardiotonic, these leaves are collected before flowering to retain the cardiac glycosides. Generally, when it is a leaf herbal raw material, it is collected before flowering. At the time of flowering, leaves mature and this decreases the bioactive constituents. Harvesting at wrong stages reduces potency and may alter the pharmacological activity. The primary processing involves cleaning. For example, Triphala ingredients, these are 3 fruits, Haritika, Bibatika and Amalika. These are cleaned to remove dust and stones, and if this is not done, then the ash value goes high. Chamomile flowers which are dried below 40 degrees is very important because the volatile oil in chamomile flowers should be retained. Cutting and chopping, for example, for licorice roots and other rhizomes, this is sliced before drying to ensure uniform extraction and uniform drying. So, roots like aconite, rhubarb, they are all chopped and cut into bigger pieces, which ensures uniform drying and also exposure to more surface area when they are extracted. Peppermint leaves should be stored in airtight containers to prevent loss of menthol during volatilization. The secondary processing, this is after storage. This involves, for example, powdering. So, example is neem leaves are powdered to prepare neem churna. So, this powder can be directly used as a formulation, or these powders can be further subjected to extraction. Powdering and maintaining uniform particle size enhances the extraction and leads to optimum extraction of the active constituents from the herb. For example, curcuma longa, which is turmeric, it undergoes solvent extraction to isolate curcuminoids, which later is formulated into capsule form. Ginseng extracts are standardized with ginsenosides and these are formulated into tablets. This is an important regeneration drug and it is very important to standardize with respect to ginsenosides. Amla juice is stabilized with natural preservatives to prevent microbial growth. Quality control, which is very important part of any herbal formulation or herbal raw material, the phytochemical standardization with respect to the major active constituent is stressed upon these days by WHO and Ayush. So, for example, St. John's wort, which is tested for hypericin content using high performance liquid chromatography. The microbial testing for aloe gel is checked for the absence of E. coli. So, aloe gel when it is poured on an agar plate should not show growth of any microorganism. The regulatory compliance for Ayurvedic churnas must meet Indian pharmacopoeial standards for ash values, extractive values and microbial limits. Chawanprash preparation involves multiple herbs. Any chawanprash which is prepared has multiple herbs in it and this is a semi-solid layer preparation with honey and ghee. So, the amount of honey added, the amount of ghee added, the consistency, everything should be taken care when we are processing this formulation. The green tea extracts are standardized for catechins. These are modern day standardization methods which are used and green tea which is available in the market today and consumed as a nutraceutical is standardized with respect to catechin, which is a flavonoid present in green tea, and the potency or therapeutic effect of green tea is because of presence of these catechins. Boswellia serrata resin is processed into tablets for and is commonly used for arthritis. So, this combines an Ayurvedic knowledge. This is developed from traditional Ayurvedic knowledge and converted into modern day dosage form. To summarize, the selection and authentication for herbs like ashwagandha is very important. This is pulverized and an HPLC method is used to detect withanolides. This prevents any kind of adulteration. If the amount of withanolides are mentioned, then we can ensure the quality of the raw material of ashwagandha. Aloe vera should be harvested at 3 to 4 years for maximum aloin content. This is the anthraquinone glycoside present in aloe. Chamomile should be dried carefully so that we have enough volatile oil in the raw material, and similar examples for turmeric and St. John's wort. WHO justifies the processing of herbal raw materials, and it is mandatory that any herbal raw material, before it is commercially marketed as a raw material or as a finished product, must undergo processing. So, the quality assurance, the safety by removal of contaminants, pesticides, heavy metals, the stability is ensured by proper drying, extraction, packaging, which prevents degradation of all these secondary metabolites present in the herb. The traceability, where each step supports pharmacovigilance and global trade compliance. Standardization using modern day methods, which helps us detect the bioactive compounds present in the herb. And WHO stresses, this is a classic example where digitalis leaves must be processed under controlled condition to maintain cardiac glycoside stability. So, here rapid drying, where the moisture content is brought down rapidly to less than 5% using vacuum. If this is not done for digitalis, then this leads to activation of some enzymes which degrade the glycoside. So, it is very important that the moisture content should be less than 5% when digitalis leaves are collected. Similarly, Ayush also justifies processing of herbal raw materials, and the raw material security, value addition by transforming raw materials into standardized extracts, compliance with classical texts must be maintained, the safety and efficacy, this is in line with the WHO guidelines, global acceptance by maintaining all this. And a classic example of Ayush guidelines followed for Triphala is these ingredients must be cleaned, dried, powdered and tested for microbial load. They must be tested for ash values, extractive values before formulation to ensure safety and compliance. So, this is a comparative justification of WHO and Ayush guidelines, where the focus is on global GMP or traditional authenticity. In WHO guidelines, we do use modern methods of analysis, and here we stress on some traditional methods of analysis, but both of them signify or stress upon the removal of contaminants and maintain the microbial limits. Standardization with respect to marker compounds, documentation, traceability, cultivation in case of Ayush guidelines to reduce wild harvesting, and the outcome is global acceptance of these herbal therapeutics. Processing of herbs is not optional but essential today. WHO justifies it for global safety and standardization, while Ayush justifies it for sustainability, authenticity and regulatory compliance. So, together they ensure that herbal medicines are safe, effective and internationally credible. So, the post cultivation processing is equally important. Different parts of the plants like leaves, rhizomes, barks, roots and unorganized drugs are used in formulation of herbal therapeutics, and this each plant part requires specific handling to preserve the bioactive compounds and ensure safety, stability and therapeutic efficacy. So, after cultivation, herbs undergo cleaning, drying, cutting and chopping, storage and processing into different dosage form. Each plant part has got different methods of drying. For example, leaves may be dried in a tray dryer or they can be shade dried. Rhizomes, if we have to dry, we have to cut them, chop them. At times, they are just hung between two tree stems on a rope. The barks are dried naturally. So, depending on the drug and the plant part, each pharmacopoeia mentions how these drugs are processed for the market. Leaves, like I was saying, are shade dried to preserve the volatile oil and the chlorophyll content. So, when they are marketed, generally they should retain the chlorophyll content. They can, if the leaves are larger, they can be cut, chopped and reduced in size and stored in airtight containers. Senna leaves, which are used as laxatives, should be shade dried to preserve senosides. These are anthraquinone glycosides which are present in senna leaves. Peppermint, which is dried at less than 40 degrees Celsius to retain the menthol content, and neem also should be shade dried, generally the green color maintained, which is used for antimicrobial use. Processing of rhizomes, washing, boiling and steaming. Sometimes rhizomes are boiled and steamed to stop the vegetative growth. Else, when we collect rhizomes like ginger or turmeric, when they are stored, it may give rise to new shoots. So, boiling or plunging them in warm water may stop the vegetative growth. It also reduces bitterness or deactivates some enzymes which may stop the conversion of bioactives. Ideally, they may be cut into slices and then dried, or they may be pulverized. For example, ginger rhizome is washed, peeled, sliced, dried and powdered. The white ginger which is commonly seen in the market, that is bleached ginger, which stops the vegetative growth. Turmeric, which is Curcuma longa, these rhizomes are boiled, which is called curing. They are dried, polished and ground into turmeric powder. Galangal, which is another rhizome, is dried and sliced for use in traditional medicines and culinary applications. Processing of barks. So, what you see here is a picture of cinnamon. When the bark is collected, it is stripped from the main stem, it is stored like this and allowed to dry. So, when it is allowed to dry like this, it intertangles into one another. This facilitates the shipping or transport of the bark. This is typically cinnamon bark, which you can see one quill inside the other. So, cinnamon bark is stripped, dried, rolled into quills and used as flavoring, spice or as a medicine. Cinchona bark is dried, powdered for quinine for extraction. Cinchona is a much thicker bark and that occurs as single quills. In case of cinnamon, this is double quill or compound quill where it is packed one inside the other. Arjuna bark is shade dried and powdered for cardioprotective formulations since it contains cardiac glycosides. Roots are generally washed, cut into smaller pieces, dried in sun or shade depending on the phytoconstituent, and then later they are pulverized. Ashwagandha roots, for example, are shade dried, powdered and standardized for withanolide content. Licorice root is cleaned, sliced, dried and used for glycyrrhizin extraction. It is standardized with respect to glycyrrhizin. Ginseng root is steamed, it is dried, powdered and standardized for ginsenosides. Very important, processing for unorganized drugs. What are unorganized drugs? These are drugs which do not have a proper shape, and when you place such drugs under the microscope, they will not show an organized structure. These are unorganized drugs. So, the classic example is gums. Gums are collected as exudates from stem. So, when an incision is given on a stem, the plant literally cries and these tears are in form of the gums. Here we have to take care that no dirt or debris attaches to the gums, since after the incision the plant is left for few hours before the gum is collected. So, it has to be, we have to be very careful when we are collecting. It has to be purified by removing the debris or any insoluble matter that is sticking to the gums. For example, gum arabic collected from acacia tree, it is dried, powdered and used as an emulsifier, it is used as an excipient, it is also used for therapeutics. Aloe gel which is extracted from the leaves is stabilized with preservative since it has high carbohydrate content. Opium latex, which is collected from the capsule, this is collected with two important traditional instruments, which is the nashtar and charfala, and an incision is given on the capsule such that there are 3 lines on the capsule and it does not penetrate deep into the capsule. Only on the outer periphery incision are given and the latex is collected from which the morphine alkaloids are extracted. Castor oil, it is extracted from seeds, purified and used as a laxative or as an excipient. So, to summarize, leaves are cleaned, shade dried, examples are senna, peppermint, neem. Rhizomes are ideally cut and dried, barks are harvested, cleaned and dried. Roots are washed, cut, plunged into boiling water sometimes to stop the vegetative growth, and unorganized drugs have to be freed from dirt. Processing is very important for global acceptance. Safety is assured, there is quality and standardization, stability and shelf life is improved, regulatory compliance is met with, and there is an increase in consumer confidence and marketability. Safety assurance, because we assure that these are free from pesticides, heavy metals, microbial contamination and adulterants, and proper cleaning ensures compliance with WHO and Ayush. Quality and standardization, for example, St. John's wort is standardized with respect to hypericin content, and this is accepted globally in Europe and US. Stability and shelf life, for example, turmeric rhizomes which undergo curing and polishing, and they are standardized with respect to curcuminoids. Regulatory compliance by ensuring that we follow good agricultural and collection practices and good manufacturing practices for herbal therapeutics. The consumer confidence and marketability are the most important factors when we are designing and planning a herbal formulation, and hence the herbal processing has to be done with utmost care. So, summarizing here, what we saw: leaves, rhizomes, barks, roots and unorganized drugs, they are acceptability globally and the processing steps. So, processing is a gateway to global acceptance of herbal products. Without it, herbs remain unstable, unsafe and inconsistent. With it, they become standardized medicines and nutraceuticals that meet WHO, Ayush and international pharmacopoeial standards, enabling export, consumer trust and integration into modern healthcare systems. So, processing ensures tailored handling of plant parts, it ensures quality, safety and compliance, ensures global credibility and acceptance of herbal therapeutics. Thank you.